When I was in formation, we had a summer assignment to do a homily in a church. You know, we were doing homilies in class, and that summer, they said we had to do a homily in church. Well, not being ordained, we couldn't preach at Mass, so we were going one night during the week, and then we were separated into groups, so our group got together, and I was preparing, I was still working in the oil field, and I was preparing for that homily. And I went to work that morning, and I was thinking, boy, you know, I got to get this homily together, because it was that night that we had the class. So I sat down at 9 o'clock break by myself, and I read through the readings, and I read through some of the resources, but as the same as before, nothing clicked. Nothing just spoke out to me as to what to preach on. And if you really think the Holy Spirit is not working in our lives, at lunchtime, I sat down, and I used to eat lunch by myself so that I could read or whatever, and I said, you know what? I said, I'm just going to put this aside, and I'm going to go. They had a couple of guys that were sitting a few workstations away from me, and I went and had lunch with them. And when I sat down and took my lunch out, one of the guys looks at me, and he says, give me some hope. And I said, what do you mean, give you some hope? He said, yeah. He said, tell me something that's going to give me some hope. Guess which readings I was working on? The ones for this weekend. And as Catholic Christians, we have to have hope, right? Our faith has to give us hope that God is going to win in the end. In case you didn't know that, that's a spoiler alert. Paul tells us in the second reading, right, that the trials and tribulations of this day are nothing compared to the glory of heaven, or nothing compared to what God has in store for us. That has to give us hope. That has to tell us that our faith is real, that we have a God who loves us, and that we have to have hope in Him that He's going to get us through whatever we're going through. Scott Hahn made the statement one day. He says, no matter how fast you can run or how good you can hide, suffering will find you. We're going to suffer in this life some kind of way, no matter what it is, if it's separation in families or illness or unemployment or coronavirus or cancer or whatever. I mean, there's so many things out there, so many negatives. But if we focus on just those things and we stop looking to God to get us through, that's all we're going to see. We're never going to see the glory of God because we focus on the negatives. I read a little thing on Facebook this week, and it said, turn off the news and love your neighbor. And how real is that, right? You watch the news, and I told you all before, I'm a newsaholic. In recovery, a little bit. But, you know, we watch the news and they just keep piling and piling and piling and piling all of the negatives in the world today. But Paul is telling us that that pile of negatives is really small compared to the glory of God and how much God our Father loves each and every one of us. And I know I've said this before, but at our baptism, we receive the Holy Spirit. That Spirit that parted the Red Sea. That Spirit that raised Jesus from the dead. That Spirit dwells in us each and every day. And we have the power of that Spirit. If only we had the faith of a mustard seed. How awesome is that? That we have a God who loves us. You know, that's one of the things I always think about. It's like, you know, we have a God who loves us so much. A God who created everything. And Paul says that creation is bound to Him. But we have a God who created everything. Everything that's ever been imagined. Everything and things that haven't even been imagined. God is the Creator. And He takes time to love someone like me. And I say that because I see myself as being the less of all of us here today. And if God takes the time to love us, more than anything else, because He created us. He's going to get us through whatever trials and tribulations come our way. You see, do we live our lives as people of faith? Do we live our lives as people of hope? You know, when you look at the news and you see all of these people out there who have no hope, do you know why they have no hope? Because they don't know who God is. We have the joy of knowing Him. We have the joy of receiving Him in the Eucharist. We have the joy of knowing that we have a God who loves us and wants nothing but the best for us. Yesterday morning, I was driving to a wake, and I don't know if I told you all this before, but as I drive, I kind of rehearse my homily. A lot of people think I'm talking on the phone. But I read a story yesterday morning, and I told myself, I said, you know what, that story kind of fits. And what it was, there was a men's breakfast, and the priest was invited to come. It was a men's group that gathered every so often, and they invited their priest to come to the breakfast, and they sat down and get ready to eat, and the leader told the priest, he said, somebody else is going to say grace. It's his turn. So this old Cajun stands up, and he's dressed kind of shabbily. He had a bibbed overalls, and I'm going to venture to say probably his white boots on. And he started out, everybody bowed their heads, and he said, Lord, I hate buttermilk. And the priest opened his eyes, and he just kind of looked, and he's like, oh my gosh, where is this going? And then the old man said, Lord, I hate the Lord. And the priest kind of looked around, and he saw a couple of other people's eyes opening up. Same thought, where is this old man going? And he said, Lord, you know how much I hate raw white flour. And there was a silence. And he said, but Lord, you know how much I love fresh, warm biscuits. He said, God, he says, please give us the patience to see you working in our lives. We may not like everything that's going on, but give us the faith to know that you're mixing something that's going to be awesome for us. That your greatness is going to be there for us. Give us the patience to see it through. How awesome that is, isn't it? Makes you hungry, too. But anyway, isn't it awesome that we have a God who loves us so much that He's going to get us through, right? Gospel 2 weeks ago, Jesus said that we have to take up our cross and follow Him. The gospel last week said that we take on His yoke because His burden is light. And He said that because He's going to help us to carry that burden. He's going to help us to carry that cross. But we have to be willing to listen. See, we can't just sit back and say, well, the deacon said that God's going to take care of it, so I don't have to do anything. Yes, we do. Our faith has to move us to action. Our faith has to make us follow God's will and be His hands to His people, to spread His love. He's calling each and every one of us to be His disciples. He's calling each and every one of us to have faith in Him who created us, to have faith in Him who died for us, to have faith in Him who rose for us, and to have faith in Him who pours Himself out so that we can receive Him. He's calling each and every one of us to have hope and to spread that hope so that we can be those seeds that fall on fertile ground and produce much fruit. Are we ready to take on that challenge? And just another little note about that summer class. One of the first times I got up in front of a microphone, one of the critiques was, that I either had to lower my volume or step away from the microphone. And there's two things about that, right? One, I have no control on my volume. I think the knob broke many years ago. And I keep forgetting to back away from the microphone. But God challenges us to have hope in Him. Are we up for the challenge?